friends. He encouraged, he spurred them on, he challenged them, he said to take heart. So he's a perfect example of what it looks like to be on both sides. And so I want to hopefully that you guys can feel encouraged and inspired to do that as well. So the scripture that I want to take a look at is Proverbs 27:17. And it says, as iron sharpens iron, a friend sharpens another friend. And in this scripture, it's really talking about your character that's being sharpened. You can't actually be who God called you to be without other people investing in your lives and challenging you, encouraging you, helping you out with your struggle. You'll always live a cheapened version of yourself without other people. And so let's not do that. Let's live out who God called us to be to the fullest. And yeah, I just want to allow you guys to kind of keep that in mind as we are taking this kind of interview style that we're doing. It's a little bit of a different format. I'm really excited. But Pandan's going to share just basically a specific struggle that she had while she was in college, kind of walking us through that, what anchored her, and talking about these two different aspects of what is it like to actually allow godly community in, and what is it like to actually be there for other people. So Pandan, you can share a little intro, about yourself.
I actually think Brittany covered it very well. I'm Pandan Hewitt. Um, I'm I'm originally from Nigeria, actually, and I've lived in Philly. Probably somebody's like, yes. Lived in Philly since 2000. I came to the States in 1998.
All
Some of
right.
you may or may not have been born, and and yeah, I lived in like Harrisburg for a couple years and then moved to Philly to go to Temple, actually.
To you,
Yes, to
we out
you.
here.
Temple Music School. So probably my favorite 4 years of my life. If
Oh,
there's an era I can pick, except for this one portion we're talking about.
yeah.
But it turned out to be good. It
Yes.
turned out to be a good
Praise
thing.
God.
Yeah.
Awesome. Love it. As I said, Panin is one of my favorite people in the whole
And
entire
you are
world.
one of my
Oh,
faves for
no
sure.
lie. No lie. She is someone I consider a mentor, a big sister. She knows what she just embodies being faithful to people. She's all up in my junk, as we are leading you guys, we are also undercovering. And so it's just important that we allow others to speak in. So Panin,
Yeah.
can you share just that struggle that you had at Temple? What kind of, well, first, what happened?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then what really anchored you during that time? Because we are going to be talking about community, but I think it's important for us to realize that hey, there's some steps that we need to take individually,
Yes.
when we're going through a struggle. So,
Yes, most definitely.
mhm.
So I was at Temple Music School, the jazz program for voice performance. So when I found out, I was gigging all the time. I was in like a couple. I was in one main wedding band, but when you're in school like that, especially in music school, it's all about the hustle. In as far as like you want to gig, get experience. So I was just doing what we're all supposed to be doing. Usually once you get into like the upper grades, you're teaching lessons, all that kind of stuff. So I was just doing what I was supposed to do right from freshman year. I did not really have any, I'd been singing since a kid, like since I was could walk
Yes, she
probably.
can sing.
And
She can sing. Okay.
but I did not have proper, in Nigeria, I didn't really have proper training. I didn't even really
Mm,
know there was like a improper way to sing. I just sang.
mm,
So when I came to the States, I was getting, training. I prepped for music school, went to Temple. My junior year, and I'm like doing great. Okay.
mhm.
My junior year, I start to notice slowly that I can't seem to, my voice doesn't seem to recover from like a hard night of singing. And I was starting to notice a decline in my range on both ends, which
Oh,
was what was
wow.
crazy, was that it was just kind of shrinking. So long story short, eventually a voice teacher and a couple other people say you need to go see an ENT,
Mm,
ear, nose, and throat specialist. And so I went and saw one, and they did the whole yucky, disgusting scope thing. Found out I had acid reflux, which made a lot of
ooh.
sense, but found out I had two cysts on my vocal cords.
That's
When they
crazy.
first saw it, they didn't know, they needed to determine whether they were cysts or not. So they
Mhm.
put you on absolute vocal rest. If they're nodules, they can go away. If they're
Okay.
cysts, then that could mean surgery. So they usually try to opt for the least invasive,
Mhm.
you know, method. Sure enough, came back. They were cysts.
Wow.
And one was like ginormous on my right vocal fold. And it just came from years and years of just overuse,
Mm.
So they said I had to go under the knife. And when I was like, okay, what does that mean? the, I can laugh about it now, but it was quite traumatic and devastating. But it's because she was just like, well, do you need the money from your gigging? And I was like, what would you mean? And she's like, well, like, because I was a college student, she was like, do you rely on it?
Mhm.
And I was like, no. Thank God I had guardians at the time who actually the reason I could go to school. They were paying for my
Oh,
schooling.
praise God.
Whole other miraculous story, talking about community. I mean, my God.
Mhm.
Anyways, so they were the reason I could go. So I was able to say, no, I don't really need it. And she says, okay, because from right now, you need to not sing again
Wow.
until this is sorted. And I'm like, um, I'm a voice major.
Oh my
Like,
gosh.
I'm a voice major. And so, but she knew all that. And sure enough, she actually called my boss from my wedding band because I was sobbing uncontrollably. And she said, "Show me doctor note, like calling." And
Mhm.
she basically said, Pana no longer works for you as of today. Like
Wow.
she just doesn't. She can't,
Wow.
And so that I had to take a whole bunch of incompletes for the year,
Mm.
for the semester, sorry. And I was not allowed to sing. I sat in as many of the like classes that involved singing as I could, but it became too painful.
Mm.
And eventually I had to have surgery. And pretty much it took about 2 years to bounce back.
Wow.
But that's, yeah, it was,
Mm.
that's what happened.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
wild. Like, I can't imagine that's what you were sent to college to
To
do,
do,
and for it to be ripped from
that's
you.
exactly what it felt like. It felt like I was given something, and it was so much of my identity and my purpose was
Right.
wrapped up in my sin
Mhm.
that I I'm not exaggerating when I say I had no idea who I was.
Mhm.
From that, I was like, so what am I supposed to do now?
Mhm.
Who am I supposed to be? Why is it still upsetting me? I'm fine.
No,
Like, what in
no,
the
it was
world?
real.
Yeah, it was just like, who am I
Mhm.
without my voice?
Yeah.
And that's what I just kept asking the Lord. I'm like, it felt really cruel,
Mm.
because everything leading up to it was so miraculous. How I
Mm.
even got to the country, and this couple was paying, who didn't know me, was paying for my schooling. The whole thing was, I was like, this doesn't make any sense, Lord. Like, you
Mhm.
set that all up only to now, like, I need the instrument I'm studying,
Mhm.
and now it's gone. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. That is wild, and I'm sure many of you can relate to at least, tying your identity to maybe what you do. I think that's such a struggle for all of us to feel like, okay, this is my major. This is what I'm good at. This is an extracurricular. And for it to kind of be ripped from you, or for it to not even go well, like having a moment where you're struggling, I'm sure that it can kind of shake kind of your foundation, and make you question, well, what do I do now? And like,
Mhm.
what's it going to be like, days, months from now. And
Yeah.
so it can be hard to kind of recover from that. So thank you, even for being willing to share that side of your story,
Yeah.
because a lot of us do know you because of your voice,
Mhm.
watching Freedom. And I mean, it's recovered because you can sing. So
That's
praise
all,
God.
nothing but the Lord, for real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So during that time of hardship, what do you feel like anchored you?
What anchored me was, I talk real. So,
Hmm.
guys, this
Real,
is how
real.
I talk. This is how I talk about the Lord. It's not meant to be disrespectful. We're just close like that. What anchored me was the same thing that angered me, and that was the Lord.
Yeah,
And so
that's
that was
good.
a very hard thing to do. But I just thought all believers spoke to the Lord a certain way. So, and I'm kind of glad of the ignorance of certain things.
Mm,
There are certain areas, and that's one that has never changed. And I've always felt close to him in that way is that I've always felt like I've been able to talk to him about anything
Yeah.
and everything, like he's right there. Like it
Mhm.
would be like if I came home and slammed the door and finally it's just me and him and I'm like, so what was that about? Like, what am I supposed to do?
Yeah.
And like that's literally how we had the conversation. So there were
Mhm.
many nights of like, I need you so much to
Yeah.
get through this, but I'm so mad at you right now because
Right.
why are you letting this happen? Because you're
Mm.
God, you can do anything. You literally just showed me that like my existence in this country, standing right now, even talking to you about this
Mm.
is a miracle. So I
Right.
know you can do anything.
Mhm.
Why are you allowing this to happen? And this doesn't make any sense,
Yeah.
And I kind of went through that phase where it felt like there was silence on his end, but he wasn't. He was speaking the whole
Mm.
time. And
Yeah.
that's where honestly community came in, played a
Yeah.
big role. He spoke a lot through others
Yeah.
to me.
Definitely. I think
Yeah.
sometimes we need that for sure. I think I know I've had conversations with the Lord like
Thank
that,
you.
in some moments where I feel like I wouldn't admit that I was angry with the Lord. And he's
Hmm.
like, you can just tell me you're upset,
Yeah. He
know?
already knows.
Right.
He already knows. That's the crazy thing is that
Hmm.
we spend so much time trying to keep stuff from him when
Hmm.
he knows. And it's
Right.
it's like I have to still remind myself of
Yeah.
that.
Same.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah. Well, I know you mentioned community and like how God used other people to speak really during that season.
Yeah.
So, can you share just about that? Like, how did like just godly community play a role during that specific time period that you're facing?
Yeah, that I had non-Christian friends that were helpful too, but definitely the biggest part of that, I could not have survived this without the Christians in my life who were able to say, God still has a plan though.
That's good.
And God is with you in this, even though you're a little mad at him right now and you don't really understand what's going on. Cause I
Mhm.
really felt like I was just dropped in a pit,
Right.
you know? And I just, yeah, I was diagnosed with like clinical depression, but when they saw my face, they said, it's mild. It's mild. And I was like, cause I was like, I'm sorry. Like the Nigerian in me was like, I'm sorry. This is some American stuff. I don't know what this is. We don't believe in this.
Mhm.
Like, please, somebody call my mom. I'm going home. Like, I just was like, no, we don't do this. So, no. So I really resisted for a while. And if it wasn't for community, if it
Mhm.
wasn't for the people in my life saying, Panin, it's okay. Because here's the thing, it didn't make sense to me that along with losing the voice, a big part of it is that I had this horrible breakdown, right? Which
Mm.
then became diagnosed as depression. And I didn't really understand the concept of that. It seems weird to me now because I get it. But I'm telling you, there was a time I didn't. I didn't understand it. A lot of it was cultural, but a lot of it was also my own personality. I had been through so much for my age, so many just tough things in life, and some of them really, really bad, that I thought, why would this be the thing that breaks me? And I
Mm.
actually, first time I met with the counselor, I actually said that. I was kind of just sitting on the couch looking at him like, I don't understand why I'm here,
Right.
and he was like, well,
Mhm.
basically you called me crying on the phone. So I was just like,
That's
I was
amazing.
so angry about the whole thing because I didn't feel like I don't know, I felt like I was betraying myself. Like I couldn't be
Mm.
strong, I couldn't will myself
Mhm.
to stop crying 1 minute and then laughing the next, and then
Mhm.
not being able to sleep, and then just like falling over. I
Mhm.
experienced my first panic attack ever in a grocery store,
Wow.
ran out of that place like losing my mind,
Mm.
just freaking out. Like, what
Mhm.
is this feeling when you don't know what it is?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I
Mhm.
had no idea what it was. I thought I was dying. I actually thought I was dying because
Mhm.
it's all in your
Yeah.
body and everything. And I went into my apartment, shut the door. Now,
Mhm.
granted, I'm a bit dramatic, but I swear it was like the movies. I literally like got home and shut the door, crumpled against the door, did not leave my apartment for like 2 weeks. And then
Wow.
my best friend found out.
Mm.
She just came over to visit, opened the fridge and said, "Honey, what have you been eating?" And I
Mhm.
said, "Oh, this here and
Mhm.
there." Thank God for Christian best friends, because
Mm.
she just literally was like, "Okay, yeah, we can't do this." And I
Mhm.
told her about the pet. I wasn't telling anybody.
Mm.
You mentioned a little bit about isolating and
Yeah.
stuff. I found it hard to tell people because I felt like, but I'm strong.
Mhm.
Like, how do I come? I'm come from a third world country. My parents weren't rich. Our family was not that well to do. We were all greatly educated. I went to an American run school. Like, there's all the good stuff, but it was a hard life. So
Mhm.
to me, it was like, why would I come all the way over here just to fall apart? And why would I
Mm.
come all the way over here just for the Lord to take this thing
Yeah.
away?
Mhm.
None of it made any sense to me. And I was having a hard time not being able to handle it.
Mhm.
And so I didn't tell people because I was the strong one. I'm the one that the friends would call and will talk to you for hours on end. I was the one
Mhm.
with the good advice. I was the one who was like, just stick it out. I was the one who would drop, "You have God" at any given moment,
Mhm.
and not in an annoying way, like in a real way.
Yeah.
Oh, and I was the one who had this great relationship with, you know,
Mhm.
at that time, the church I was going to, I was there all the time, like
Mhm.
praise team, dance team, like the whole
All the
thing. It was just
teams.
me and you, Jesus, all day. And then it was like, wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Thought we were
I
good.
thought we had a thing on. Like, what is this, Jesus? Why is this gone? So yeah, it
Yeah.
was a really shocking
Mhm.
thing. But my friend came and took me to the grocery store and literally
Yeah.
just said, "I'm just gonna point at things and you nod your head or shake your head, and we're gonna
Mhm.
put it in the cart,
Mhm.
and then we'll go." I handed her like my card. Like, I literally was just,
Yeah.
because the last time I was there, I had the panic attack, so I was freaking out.
Right.
If she hadn't done that, I was gonna go for, who knows? I was wasting away, like
Mm.
just hiding,
Yeah.
hiding how broken I actually was.
Wow. That's wild. I think honestly, I think many of us can relate to difficulties being vulnerable, actually sharing when things are going on. And man, thank God for Christian community and for friends that will just like, yeah, we're not going to do
Yeah,
this. Okay. This is not what we're about to
we're not
do.
doing that.
And so I know you mentioned that like facing difficulties and challenges being vulnerable. So how do you feel like you overcame, that like being uncomfortable, being vulnerable?
In like being how I overcame so that I could be vulnerable, you
Yes.
mean?
Yes. Hmm.
Oh, I would definitely say the friends that I trusted,
Hmm.
like the one that came and took me to go get some food.
Yes.
And I leaned on the community at the church I was attending at the time quite a bit, but honestly, only like two people maybe knew like the real stuff that was going on, because
Yeah.
I was a leader too on the teams
Right.
I was
Yeah.
on. And not because that wasn't so much like trying to keep anything. It was more just, trying to persevere through the whole thing.
Hmm.
Um, and also counseling made all the
Mm,
difference. That
that's good.
definitely taught me to be vulnerable. I actually I don't really struggle with being vulnerable. It's more
Mhm.
that I isolate.
Ah, okay,
But if
okay.
someone is near to me and I can trust you, then I actually can easily be an open book. It's just the way I'm
Mhm.
made. But if I don't trust you though, and I'm not sure, and if I even for a moment think you're going to look at me differently,
Mhm.
or think all of us, like if you can't come back from what I'm about to tell you about myself and still see me,
Mhm.
you like, don't let it define me, whatever my
Right.
flaw is. If I
Mhm.
even get just a hint of that,
Mhm.
then I won't
Mhm.
be open to you. But if I feel like I can trust you, um, I think that's what's so important when we're
Mhm.
trying to be other people. Um, I think just being just letting them sense your honesty, to just know
Mhm.
that you're just there. You have no agenda. You have no, they don't, you're not going to see them any differently.
Yeah.
Like, it helps people be vulnerable
Mhm.
with you. And so I was able to do that with a few people.
Yeah.
But counseling helped the most because I
Yeah.
was forced to talk about,
Yeah.
and I resisted it, but
Mm.
I opened up. And the more God kept cleaning that stuff out, because when you go into counseling, man, when all that stuff comes up, you're just like, I'm sorry, did that come out of me? Like that can't possibly be. Can we just wait, turn around? Let me put some of this back, because I don't know where
That was a
that
lot.
came from.
That was a
Like,
lot.
it's a lot. It was a
Mhm.
lot of stuff that I didn't realize how much you're not aware of about
Mhm.
yourself,
Mhm.
And so, like, having to exercise opening up to somebody who's there to help you
Right.
made it so that, I mean, by the time I was done counseling, I was ready to tell everybody everything. Like, you need to go see a counselor. You need to go see somebody. Everybody needs to go see somebody.
I love it.
And it helped. It really
Yeah.
helped. Yeah.
Yeah. I love what you mentioned about like what you're, I guess, looking for in a trusted friend. Cause I know
Hmm.
for me, it was difficult for both. I would isolate and I didn't trust people.
Right.
So
Oh
it was
man.
very difficult for me to be vulnerable. Even if I logically knew this person is trustworthy,
Yeah.
just open your mouth and share. But I felt paralyzed by fear of judgment,
Mm,
that you would look at me
yeah.
differently. But I realized I'm like, man, like I'm just gonna be stuck this way if I don't allow the people that God's placed in my
Yeah.
life to really minister to me. So, yeah, I know, many of you might be in that position and we're ENC, man. We're community.
Mm,
And we're definitely going to talk a little bit more about like practical steps, but just want to encourage you guys to not isolate, to be vulnerable. I mean, we're here for you. We
yeah.
are like as campus ministers, as a church, for and each other as well. Like I'm sure if you're struggling with one thing, I'm sure other people are as well. And so it really it takes being proactive. It
Yeah.
does. So how do you feel like, just to wrap up kind of this
Hmm.
section,
Sure.
how do you feel like you kind of transformed, I guess, internally,
Hmm.
through, I mean, the individual steps you're taking with going to counseling,
Sure.
but even maybe things that people had said to you and encouraged you? How do you feel like you started to change or just even just overcome this whole situation?
Yeah. I I would say the biggest part of it was the counseling, and I purposely chose a Christian counselor
Mm-hmm.
because in one of the more vivid moments that I felt like I finally like I could hear God's voice.
Mm,
Of course,
yeah.
He was speaking the whole time. I just was looking for it to come at me a certain way, like the way we talk. And He was using a whole bunch of people to be talking, but I I looked for a Christian counselor because in one of those moments of talking to God, I felt very strongly that He's saying to me, there's just some work we need to do
Mm,
inside of you before we can keep moving forward. And so you
wow.
just need to stay still long enough for me to do that.
Yeah.
And so that really tipped me over the edge. I mean, along with the depression and everything else, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
where else was I gonna go?
Right.
But with the counseling, like, it helped because all my sessions started with prayer. He was such a great counselor, and at the end of everything, after all the stuff was out, he
Mm-hmm.
was actually really good at kind of bandaging you up for the night
Mm-hmm.
and would say, well, this is what I believe God is saying
That's
about what you
good.
should learn about today. And
Yeah,
that
that's so
that
good.
just really,
Yeah.
it made such a big difference because when I would go in there, I was very conscious of the fact that God was speaking through
Yeah.
this man and that God was doing a very specific work
Yeah.
inside of me. And the man said from the very beginning, he was just like, this is surgery. You just have to imagine
Yeah.
yourself on the table. You're cut
Mm-hmm.
open. So
Yeah.
don't get up until I sew you back up,
Wow.
you know?
Wow.
And so I just was like, okay. So whenever I'd want to fight it and buck it,
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine that, like, I don't
Mm.
want to be walking around like not sewn up,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that really, yeah, I would say that
Yeah.
was probably the biggest part of overcoming.
Mm-hmm.
And one other thing, this book,
Yes.
Heinz Feet on High Places, I believe is the name of the book. It's
Ooh.
old. I
Okay.
don't know if a lot of people know it or not, but the timing of it's actually the church,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is where the community really came in. We were in a Bible study at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, we started reading this book. I think it's by Joan Hunard, or I can't remember the name, but it's Hind's Feet on High Places. And it's an
Mhm.
allegory using like deer and all this kind of stuff. It's
Mm.
going to sound silly if I describe it.
Mhm.
When I tell you it was life changing, not just to me, to everybody in
Wow.
that group, because it's like, it's one of those allegories where like the deer has a name and her friends are grace and mercy. And, so,
Oh,
and
wow.
the way
Wow.
it digs so deep because it's all about her going from the valley
Mhm.
to the mountains. So you can imagine the
Mhm.
Christian walk. And that simultaneously with everything, the Lord was just so, the people he put in my
Mhm.
life, all of that,
Yeah.
not a one thing I think
Mhm.
could have been out of place. They all came together to help me overcome.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
awesome. That is amazing. God knows
Mhm.
what he's doing.
He does.
He
He
sure
really does.
does.
Even when
Yeah.
you tell him he doesn't, he does.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think, like, just even that, like, imagery kind of that you painted of, like, being on a surgeon's table, like,
Yeah.
we don't like the waiting,
Mm-mm.
we don't like the waiting, but we again, what you said, we don't wanna be walking around with
Yeah. With all your
everything
stuff
hanging
out.
out,
No.
and so sometimes God kinda takes away so that, we're not leaning on this thing that can sometimes become an idol, where this is who I
Yes.
am. He takes that away, to
Yes.
do some deeper work,
Yes.
and to feel more of himself in us. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So,
Exactly.
wow, it's amazing. Well, I feel like I put you in my
Oh, you said, let me put you in mine.
having our little moment.
Yeah, we do this all the time.
We do.
Sorry. Apologize that you had to be here for that.
Yes.
But not really.
I love it. Anyway, moving on, moving
Moving on,
on.
moving on.
Yes. So being on the other side, what has it been like for you being like that faithful friend to other people who are maybe going through other hardships? Like, what's been kind of your experience, and like practically what are the kind of the challenges? Because
Mm,
it takes sacrifice being a
yeah,
faithful friend,
yeah.
but also, man, what are some of the benefits of it as well?
Um, Definitely, I think the benefits of being a faithful friend. I know for me, a lot of my friends are like family, and because
Mhm.
I'm the only one from my family that's here in the States,
Mhm.
that was huge for me. A lot of
Mhm.
my friends very quickly became like brother and sister
Mhm.
to me. And, not just anybody and everybody, but like the ones I became really close to, me and my siblings are really close.
Mhm.
We are. So that was just such a void,
Right.
that I felt like the Lord really, when they say the Lord puts you in family, he really, really did.
Mhm.
From the old church I was going to and to freedom. I mean, freedom was just like,
We
oh,
out
thank
here.
you, Jesus. There are real people here that like,
Yeah.
that actually want to get to know me, that I want to get to know. Like people are just real.
Mhm.
They're just real with you. And I love that. I love that about our community. I really
Yeah.
do. It's so important to have. And I think that for me, I love people. So I actually like being friends with people. I probably have way more than I should have because sometimes I spread myself too thin and that
Right.
becomes a challenge.
Right.
In this older stage of my life,
I don't think you're
um,
old.
I'm not telling you.
You're young to me.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. This other side of my life, I've learned different lessons, some of the
Mhm.
challenging aspects of it, where I've had to learn how to put down boundaries
Mhm.
in a way and funny things I had to learn about myself. It's like, it's so funny how when God wants to teach you about something that you're struggling with, I don't know about you guys, but he always seems to start with me. I tell him all the time, I hope you are talking to them the same way
Right.
you're me up all night
Right.
just telling me about myself. I hope you're telling so and so because they're your kid too. So you need to. So disrespectful, but I really do. I just feel like, come on, Lord, like let them go through some of this, but they probably are. But what you're
Right.
feeling is all you know is what you're experiencing, right?
Mhm.
So that's been such a huge challenge for me, is feeling like I've had to learn almost like a late stage in life. I didn't know that I was not very good at setting boundaries,
Mm.
and I had to be convinced as to why that was bad in the first place,
Mm.
because
Right.
I thought it was them only. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? That are just traversing boundaries. And it's like, yeah, but if you're not setting them, if
Mhm.
they don't actually know what your boundaries are,
Right.
then that's actually on you.
Mhm.
And I'm like, oh. So yes, that's been a very, very tough lesson to learn. But it's been really, really good. I think it's
Mhm.
producing a lot of good fruit, to be honest.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that actually was one of the questions that kind of came up as Billy was speaking last week. Was
Right.
like, how do you feel like, or how do you not overextend yourself? Like, how do you
Yes.
not experience
Oh my
burnout
gosh.
when you are
Wow.
the go-to person for
Yes.
people?
Yeah.
So, any advice or best practices or tips for when you're experiencing that?
I would say have a couple of friends that are where it's a two-way street, you know? So
Mm,
luckily for me, I mean, most of my close friends, that's the case,
yeah,
is that it's not just me that's the
dumping.
go-to. You can go to, I can go to them as well. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a two-way street. You need that in your corner,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're one of those people that everyone calls and
Mm-hmm.
seeks you. You cannot sustain that. You
Yeah.
just can't. You really can't. It's not, don't like wait till burnout in order
Mm-hmm.
to learn that. Just like take people's word for it who've experienced it and start to establish, like, identify those friends that you can go to in
Mm-hmm.
the same way they can come to you, even if they're different and they handle things different. But who can you open up to? Who do you know will give you good advice and not just tell you what you want to hear?
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
yeah, like you've got to, yeah, because you
Yeah.
can also pick those other people who just listen to you and
Yeah, yes,
they're just
man.
your
Yeah.
yes men. No, you want people who are going to challenge you, and you want people who are going to help you grow.
Yeah.
Um, and who are going to speak like just God's truth into your life,
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I love that because you don't just want people around you who are just encouragers. Like you need that.
Yeah.
But I'm grateful that, for the friends I do have, they're gonna tell me straight up,
Yeah. Like no joke.
like, I know you're like, that's a lie you're believing. And I'm like, you're right. You're right. Brittany will do the same thing.
Yeah.
Billy will do the same thing. I'm very grateful for the
Yeah.
community because you just need truth spoken into you. You just need to
Yeah.
be reminded
Yeah.
sometimes
That's
because
it.
you can,
Sometimes you just need to be reminded.
yeah, you can lose your way
Mhm.
sometimes. So, also, what do you feel like? I guess the benefits are of like even walking people through a difficult time because, like,
Mhm.
yes, it takes sacrifice. Yes, it's taxing,
Yes.
but what actually feels good, about
About walking through people's life?
yeah, I guess like walking through their hardships, but I would say even like helping them experience breakthrough, I feel like that can be
Yes.
rewarding.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say was the
Oh,
good part, was the
yeah.
breakthrough part.
Yes.
Was the part we can shout about. That's the
Hey.
part that I love
Mhm.
is, able to see, just being able to, I love being able to walk with someone through their life, and for them to, even because you'll like hit bumps along the way, right? You'll have wins sometimes and then you'll hit I love that moment where you've had a couple of wins, right? And
Mhm.
then you're in a slump and you have to remind that person, if you did
Mhm.
it before or remember when, you have to
Feeling.
like you like remind them of those moments. I'm such a believer of those stones, those
Yeah.
altars, those cairns that you create, to
Yeah.
like those memory things, like remember what God did here,
Yeah.
remember what God did there. And I feel like we're those stones in people's lives. Like
Yeah.
good friends, we're there to remind you.
Mhm.
Yeah, I know it, because we get into a thing and it's so huge and we just like forget. We
Right.
just like forget. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
But instead of letting them roam for 40 years in the wilderness, you just remind them, hey, by the way, remember what he did back then? Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
That's the same God we're talking about right now.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Amen. Yeah. I also love like being able to see where God is taking your friends.
Mhm,
It's like,
mhm.
I know that God, I feel like you do
Yes, I
this,
do
you
that
do
to
this
you all
all
the
the
time.
time.
It's true. I forgot that I do that to you all the time.
Yes. Or like, I'm just excited for where God's taking me
Yeah,
to. But you practically, you really see it.
you actually see it.
Yeah. I feel like that's really exciting for me. I'm
Yeah,
like, you don't even know.
yeah. You
You
have
don't
no
even
idea.
know,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Pondon, for
You're very
sharing.
welcome.
Yeah, just your own experiences. I know that's hard because it was such a huge part, of your life.
Yeah.
But also just sharing even just some advice for people to actually be, a committed friend because it does take energy. And again, guys, like we're a community, we're family. We need to get in the trenches because it really is rewarding when you get to be a part of people's journeys, when
Mhm.
you get to see people's breakthrough
Yeah.
and to know what they've been through before, all of that hard work, all of the disappointments, all that was going on behind it, and to see people experience breakthrough, to encourage them, man, like that is so rewarding. And so we shouldn't settle for surface level friendships, like
Yeah.
being a faithful friend and also allowing people in, they both require being proactive. You
Yeah.
actually need to open your mouth and say, "Hey, I'm struggling."
Yes.
And honestly, an example of this was actually way back when I was a student. It wasn't that long ago, but so I'm like way back when.
Way back.
I remember a friend who was actually struggling with some of her friendships. And she was like, "Man, I feel like I don't have any friends." And then
Mm.
another friend was like, "I'll be your friend." And they are friends to this day. Like that's 6, 7 years
Oh,
later.
wow.
Sometimes it's really just that
Just that
simple,
simple.
just saying, "Hey, I want friends,"
Yeah.
and it's just been so sweet to see them kind of go through different stages of life together. And, one got married, had a baby, you're just
Oh,
like walking
wow.
with people,
Yeah.
and so sometimes it's just that simple. And then on the other side, you have to actually reach out to see how friends are doing.
Yeah.
It's
It
so
can't be
important.
one-sided.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
can. That just is so tiring,
Mhm.
and so it's just really important to be vulnerable, to share when you're struggling. And I mean, even, in the chat, be like, "Hey, I want who wants to be friends with me?" You
Yes.
know what I mean?
I'll be your friend.
Yeah, because I feel like in Christian community, we can say that we're community, but not really walk it out.
Yeah.
And we're trying to do this thing. We're trying to be real. We're trying to really walk it out and actually know each other and be in the trenches, be in the junk. And so I just want to encourage you guys and challenge you guys to be those friends, to
Mm.
actually just open your heart up, open up what's going on, and also be there for each other as well. It's what Jesus called you, how we are a reflection of God's love to the world, when we genuinely love one another and we're there for one another.
Yeah.
So, yeah, just want to encourage you guys to do that. Be faithful, people in. And I forgot to actually mention this at the beginning, but if you have any questions, we're going to kind of move into the Q&A portion. So if you guys have any questions, post that in the chat, and our moderator will read it to us.